Hello, and thank you for joining me. I'm going to be taking you on a journey of how, at Microsoft, we're changing React Native from within. I'm Adam Foxman. I'm a principal software engineer at Microsoft. I've been doing software for about 25 years, and the last 5 years I've been working exclusively on React Native and with JavaScript technology, and it's been an interesting change from 20 years of C++. And the community around all this new technology and JavaScript has really gotten me excited and involved, and I am becoming a DevRel enthusiast, loving communicating and working with all the various wonderful, smart people out there. So, Microsoft is heavily invested in React Native. It's a huge part of our technology stack. We've been investing in it for years. We've built the desktop products for React Native, the platforms for Windows and Mac OS. And we use these in a lot of apps that we ship, or we blend in experiences using these desktop technologies. And we ship them on mobile devices, tablets, desktops. And you can see some of the product logos here. I mean, this stuff is hitting Office. It's in Windows, it's in Teams, it's in Xbox, it's in a lot of places. And so it's a big part of what we do, and that's why I'm here today to talk about it. What we found is that at the scale that we're working and with the really complicated products that we're bringing React Native to, the developer experience doesn't scale that well. The first area I wanted to touch on there is dependency alignment and compatibility. And what I mean by that is alignment specifically. At Microsoft, we have a lot of monorepos with lots of different libraries and packages and huge numbers of dependencies, and there are a few of these monorepos. So getting our dependencies aligned within a monorepo is important, because if you don't have things lined up, you tend to have duplicate packages showing up in your app bundles. One example is if you use a library that uses React Date Time Picker, and a lot of your apps are pulling that library in and sharing it, and then one of your apps separately uses React Date Time Picker, but a slightly different version to get newer features, you could have two copies of this thing showing up because you're pulling in an older version and a newer version. Yarn hoisting and PNPM isolation sort of really cause this. And I mean, in the best case scenario, your bundle gets too big, but in the worst case scenario, if there's global state involved, having two copies of a package in your app is bad news. And on the compatibility front, this is really about making sure that the version of React Native you're using, the core version, lines up with all those React Native libraries that are common to a lot of the apps we're building. You know, as React Native changes over time from 6.4 to 6.5 and 6.6, there are significant changes. Some of them are breaking, and all those libraries that we come to depend on, they need to be upgraded too. And if you're on 6.4 upgrading to 6.8, that's a big change. And which version of the gesture handler are you going to use, and which version of Reanimated are you going to use? That stuff isn't really published. Those libraries don't really go back in time and have little tables that tell you if you're upgrading from here to here. You just choose this version. So that's been a real challenge, because if you get that wrong, your apps break. Another area where we found the developer experience doesn't scale is in bundling performance and feature set. Metro is fast. It's a little bit faster than Webpack from our experience, but it's missing a lot of key features, and I'm going to go into what some of those are more later. And another challenge for us is that TypeScript is a big part of our quality gate. It's a big way that we ensure quality across all these libraries and packages, and it's just not really part of the core developer experience when you're using React Native. You can use it, you can add it, but it's somewhat difficult. And these things sort of combine to slow down the engineering experience. And that's what I mean when I say it doesn't scale, is that really at the end of the day, the work that we're trying to do as engineers is hampered by some of these challenges. And so we're working to change the status quo. We want to make things a little bit better, or a lot better if we can. And how do you do that? Well, the first step that we're taking is we want to make a substantial contribution. And we are. We're shipping these desktop platforms. We ship a lot of libraries and open source. And Separately from the technology side, we have partnerships with a lot of key players in the React Native space. And through those partnerships, we are learning and engaging and trying to understand where things are headed and how we can contribute in a way that's going to help the community and not work against the direction that the majority of folks are headed. And working directly with the community too through pull requests and our engagement in React Native Core and other libraries and things, that keeps things engaged for us and helps us understand how we can move things in the right direction internally at Microsoft so that we're staying in line with what is going on in the rest of the world. And the third area to really make a big change like this that I'm going to be talking about in the rest of this talk is core contributions, especially to React Native Core and a lot of the libraries that are fundamental to building apps. You need to be involved in all that stuff. You need to be filing issues and PRs, and we do that, and we run a lot of them through our own testing infrastructure. We contribute a lot of type information out there so that TypeScript works, and we even co-pilot a lot of releases. And so we're doing this because we want to build a set of modern scalable tools that create an exceptional developer experience. The real focus is to make React Native even more fun, easier to use, making it good for everyone through the types of things we want to put out in the world and build. It helps us internally, but realistically, we are more interested in joining the larger community and making sure we're participating and helping to bring goodness to everyone. And so that's kind of the theme of this talk, which is that a rising tide lifts all boats. It's an old adage, but it's really at the core of what we're trying to do. Software really has a tremendous amount of leverage. A few of us together can impact the experience that many people around the world using React Native have. And so we want to be the moon here. We want to influence the tide. We want to lift all boats simultaneously with positive change that's going to be really helpful and good for everyone. But what are the specific challenges that need to be addressed, right, in this space to really see this vision come to fruition? Like, what are the things that we're working towards fixing specifically? On the apps and experiences front, adding React Native to an existing app, that's a lot of what we do. That's really hard to do. There's always a nice, simple slide at various talks about how starting up a new app is fun and easy and cool, and someone did it to do an amazing thing to track COVID information, or, and those are really awesome and powerful things, but in the world of 30-year-old applications like Office or Windows, bringing React Native to an app like that, an app that moves somewhat slowly, so that you can iterate on certain experiences more quickly and reach your users more often, that's a harder challenge. And there is a guide out in reactnative.dev, and it's really helpful, but it's kind of one size fits all. And the guide doesn't really teach you what it's doing. It just it does what a guide does. It takes you from the start all the way through to the finish line, step by step. And in Office, that's probably not going to work because the UI stack is really weird and old and complicated, and there's a lot of challenge there. So it's easy to go off course. The more complicated your native app, the harder it is. And really, I'm talking about this because it's a barrier to entry for people who want to come into this world and don't really have the benefit of using React Native just as a greenfield, a brand new app. There are probably quite a bit of these that I think a lot more people we can reach if we make this a little bit smoother. Another area where another challenging area for us is staying up to date. And what I mean by this is package versions. NPM, I feel like it's moving a mile a minute. There's always a package being released somewhere, and we all probably depend on it somehow, whether it's the 10th layer or the first layer. At Microsoft, we have mono repos with over 5,000 external dependencies. And it's really difficult to keep track of these things and make upgrades because any package change has a ripple effect through the whole repo, through all the libraries and all the apps. We might ship hundreds of libraries out of a mono repo and a handful of apps, and those libraries go into other mono repos and get shipped in other apps. And so it's kind of like this really complicated, tangled web. And upgrading without breaking compatibility is a real challenge. TypeScript does help. We use TypeScript at scale. It's been an amazing quality gate for us, but it doesn't really catch these, at least in large numbers. And so what you need to do is test, and then you need to test again, go home, come back on Monday, and keep testing, because that's the only way you're really going to find most of the bugs and really understand that your compatibility when you bump a version of a particular package is still good. Inner loop. I call this the inner loop, but I don't know if there's other names for it. As developers, this is when you get an idea, you write the code, you check it in, your PR lands, and then you do it all over again. That needs to be faster. It needs to be smoother, it needs to be easier. And at scale, when you have so many packages in a mono repo and libraries that you're working on, it's kind of slow. Well, at least it feels slow. It feels like it could be faster. One area where this is especially painful is there are these cool new native equivalent tools coming out for things that all of us have been using node tools for. So things like bundlers or Babel. Now there's SWC and there's ESBuild. This is probably something a lot of you have already seen. ESBuild is written in Go, it's fast, and this benchmark is showing you that for a normal, common bundling workload, in half a second, ESBuild does what Webpack takes 40 seconds to do. So it's over 100 times faster. And when I'm sitting there waiting a few minutes for a bundle to run, this benchmark is running through my head. Why am I waiting? And so what is commonly accepted is really kind of bugs me all the time, that why can't we have this, right? It's another area where we run into scalability challenges is with haste. Haste is part of React Native. Whether you've heard of it or not, it's in there, and it's a really interesting alternative module resolver. Primarily used internally at Meta. They have a lot of cool infrastructure that makes use of it. I don't think many of us in the rest of the world have that infrastructure or benefit from it, but there is a part of haste that really kind of gets in the way, and it's called the crawl phase. And if you don't know, when you first bundle after changing your dependency graph, Metro will look through all your source code, load up all the files, and then it'll look through all the source code of all your dependencies, like everything in your repo. Every last file gets loaded, parsed, indexed, and put into an in-memory database so that haste can say, oh, you asked for this module, oh, it's over here, or wherever that source code is. But for the most part, it's not used, yet we all still have to pay the price of a crawl. And so crawls happen with Watchman, which is kind of fast. It's native code, but it still takes up gigs of memory, or Node, which is really slow. And so this is an area where I think we can make some inroads and make this a little bit more optional. Metro is an awesome bundler, and it's missing some key features. The number one issue, or the very first issue filed against Metro years ago, is that symlinks don't work. And there's a good technical reason for this. It has something to do with Watchman and the way that it traverses symlinks or can't traverse symlinks. But for the most part, you can make Metro work in a symlinked environment, like specifically if you use P and PM, you're going to have symlinks in your node modules. Or if you use yarn link, for example, you'll have an occasional symlink here and there. And you can make Metro work with it, but it still hasn't been addressed, and it's a bit of a problem. Tree shaking is not something you can work around. Tree shaking, if you don't know, is eliminating dead code. As a C++ developer originally, This is like the linker just does this for you, right? You link a bunch of files together, and it only keeps the code that you're actually using in your final executable. But in the JavaScript world, the equivalent is, think of it like you're importing something really big and complicated like Lodash, where there are all kinds of cool features and functions and spanning the gamut of anything and everything you might want to do at a language level. And you only use maybe 2 or 3 of them. The other 150 should be thrown away, but they don't. They come into your app bundle, and they get shipped to all your customers, and they just sit there and don't do anything. And so, dead code elimination, you can think of it as small bundles good, big bundles bad. and tree shaking typically works on require boundaries. So if you require only 2 or 3 of those functions and they don't pull much else in, then it can understand that, oh, the rest of it's just not needed. No one's actually importing this, so I can just throw it out. And in the inner loop, TypeScript is absent. It's kind of missing from what I call the key React Native workflows. So bundling or using your IDE, like TypeScript is there, but it doesn't quite have enough intelligence to really tell you what's going on in the terms of React Native. Like the idea of platform is missing. And so it's essential for large projects, and it holds back your ability to sort of increase your scale. So that's a lot of complaining, right? What does it actually look like to succeed? So from a developer's point of view, when you read this list, upgrades should be safe. They should be easy. You should be able to change a package version. You should be able to upgrade React Native or the gesture handler or reanimate it or something, and just trust that it's going to work. And you don't have to think about it beyond that. You shouldn't have to spend hundreds of hours doing testing and detailed compatibility analysis. And bundlers, the bundlers that you use should be fast. And there should be some kind of extensibility model, because the folks who build Metro are really smart, but they just can't think of everything because there's only a handful of people. Webpack's a really good example of this. The ecosystem that they've enabled is just amazing. There's an infinite number of plugins for anything and everything you would want to do, and maybe some things you don't want to do. But we need something like that in the Metro world, because Metro is the primary way to be bundling React Native apps. And with Hermes, things just get more and more interesting. And so we're focusing on Metro specifically with a lot of the work that we're doing. And TypeScript, if you use it, I would recommend that most people do, but it's optional, but it should be there when you want it. It should be easy to use. It should be a first-class citizen. It should just start working. It should show up everywhere that you do development, so that bugs and code don't escape your development machine unless everything's clean. Like, why let it get into a PR? Why let it land in master or main? And sort of a not so intuitive thing that contributes to success is we need to have more PRs landing in the core libraries, the React Native core itself, and the libraries that we all use. I think there's a lot of friction trying to get things contributed, and it's not for lack of trying on the part of the folks who own the repos and the part of the folks who are contributing the code. It's just a hard challenge, and I don't think we're spending enough time in that space. But we need to create a bit of a virtuous cycle where we can collaborate together, build and ship stuff often and land PRs, so that other people see that it's possible, and you don't need to have friends in high places to really get a PR through. And this will bring new ideas from places where maybe they haven't been surfacing. So just sort of a way to engage the community and expose the idea that anyone can really successfully get a PR through. I think that's really important to a successful, healthy, virtuous ecosystem around React. And so one of the things that we're doing at Microsoft is we're building a set of React Native developer tools that we call RNX Kit. And this is a repo that we made about 1.5 years ago. There are 3 of us working on it, so it's a funded project. And so far, we have about 30 release packages. There are 5 incubating packages, things that we're working on that aren't quite ready to escape yet. We have 2 test apps, one Expo, one not, so we really make sure that we're trying to keep in line with what the rest of the world is doing. And we have a bunch of active issues and even an RFC. And so this repo is focused on developer experience. It's first and foremost, it's a community project. We created it out on GitHub, and we started taking a lot of the internal tools that we had been building and using for a while. And we really wanted to move those out into the world and make them available to people, and also invite contribution and saying, does this work for you? And if so, great. If not, can you please help us make it better? These are tools that are written by developers for developers, so people who have experienced the pain firsthand. We wrote these tools to try and alleviate that pain. And one of the benefits of having this be something that we started at Microsoft but really have made it a community project is that we still get to test it at scale. We get to use it. We get to build these tools, take them in-house to these repos that are massive, and really see them fail and iterate on the tools until we get them right, so that there's a really good chance it's going to work for you when you pick it up. This isn't just something we've thought up and tried out. These are actually really well tested. And we use these tools to ship apps to millions and millions of customers. So it doesn't mean they're perfect. So we really need people to come and contribute and tell us, what else do you want it to do? Because we're funded, we're ready. We want to align with what the community is doing. So let's get on and actually meet these tools. What am I actually talking about? In the dependency space, we have a tool called DepCheck. And this thing made an appearance at last year's conference. It is just an awesome app. And it's kind of our solution to the problem that I was talking about earlier of duplicate packages showing up in an app bundle, and the compatibility issues with React Native and the libraries for React Native. As you know, they need to move in lockstep so that you keep things compatible. DepCheck, really, the way it works is it comes with this magical database inside. And I say magical because it kind of is like magic. It's think of it as like per React Native version going back about 1 year or 2, maybe even 2 or 3 years. It's a list of all the dependencies that we use in all our apps, and the versions that we know we have tested really to death. The understanding like netinfo and async storage and reanimated and gesture handler and datetime picker and clipboard and so on. Which versions of these guys really are compatible with 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, so that when you are ready to move from, say, 6.4 to 6.6, you can run DepCheck in an automated way, and it will update all your dependencies and tell you, oh yeah, you can trust it. We've shipped apps already knowing that that information is correct, and it will just move your dependencies along. So you can focus on changing your code to match the new requirements of React Native 6.6 from 6.4 to 6.6. You don't have to sit there and try and guess, oh, which version do I need to use here? Is that really going to work? Should I test it? No, everything's done. And it's extensible. You can, we have a set of libraries that we use. If you have additional libraries that you use or you have different constraints, you can add them easily to DepCheck. Another tool we're building, it's not really a tool, it's a collection of tools. It's about enhancing Metro. And the first way we do that is with symlinks. So we have a package that very simply adds symlink support to Metro. So if you use PNPM, or soon if you use NPM in isolation mode, which is kind of like what PNPM does, that's going to be coming out in the next few months, I think, symlinks will just work for you automatically. You don't have to do anything. And we added TypeScript validation to Metro. So when you bundle, if there's any type errors, you wouldn't normally hear about them, but now you'll get output that's familiar, right? You'll see the colorful errors, you'll get all the information about what's broken, and you can fail the bundle. So this is really handy if you use TypeScript as a quality gate. When you are running React Native in CI and you're bundling, your CI loop can just fail and say, no, you've introduced type errors. You probably broke something. Go back and take a look. And as a bonus, the TypeScript checking that we do is platform specific, which is kind of interesting because the way the React Native types are set up today, view props, which is like really common, it unifies Android and iOS types, so you can't really tell if there's something unique to iOS or something unique to Android. You can't really tell if you're using a property that's not really going to work. But if you're using Microsoft's Fluent UI React Native library, those things get separated back out, and you can actually see, oh, you're using an iOS prop, but you're using it in an Android app. It's probably not going to even do anything. Are you sure that's right? You might want to take a look at that. And so the way we've integrated TypeScript with Metro, you'll start to find those issues that you might not know that you have. Tree shaking. This is like super easy to use and really handy because it will immediately shrink your bundle and get rid of a bunch of stuff that you probably don't need. So it's an easy win, and it's fast because we use ESBuild to do it. On the tail end of every time you bundle, tree shaking will just run. And we added a plugin system to Metro, and we created 2 plugins. The first one will tell you if you have duplicate packages in a bundle, which I don't think there's anything else out there that will do that unless you're in the Webpack world. And so you might be surprised by what you find when you first run this. And there's also one to detect cycles in your package graph, which is a little less common, but it can lead to deadlocks. So here's what it looks like. In the first example, there's React.is is just appearing twice. There's 2 different versions going into a single app bundle, and Metro failed because you don't want duplicates. You don't want a bigger bundle. You don't want to risk having state errors and compatibility problems. And in the second one, there's a cycle where a package logger brings in FS utilities, probably to write to a log file, which then brings in file appender. And then file appender uses the logger to write messages. And so you can get into a require loop that could deadlock your app. And the third and final tool I'm going to discuss with you today is the command line interface. We've added a bunch of new commands to the React Native CLI to extend it to sort of wrap up all these tools and give you sort of a comprehensive scriptable interface to using them. There's a little hard to read, but we have all these commands start with RNX. And there's a bundle command, a start command, one for dep check, one to clean out your repo, and so on and so forth. And these are really task-oriented scripted commands, scriptable commands that you can use in CI or on your command line. And they're really focused on helping you get work done and also looking and feeling like the tasks you already use. There's a little bit of a twist. We add this idea of configurable defaults. Think of it as, all those command line parameters for bundling, like the entry file and the name of the source map file and all that good stuff. Those kind of appear in a bunch of places. They appear in package.json scripts, they appear in CI scripts, they might appear in other shell files that you use, or definitely on the command line. And when you have repetition, that tends to lead to errors. And so a package can express its own defaults. And if you want to use those, you don't have to put them on the command line anymore. As long as they're in package.json, they just work. And when we were doing our command line interface, we went to great lengths to make the bundle and the start command work exactly like the existing bundle and start commands that you use today. So you can just add RNX dash as a little prefix there. So instead of React Native bundle, you run React Native RNX bundle. And you'll get all the stuff I've been talking about for free. You can try it out. You'll get TypeScript errors. You'll get duplicate detection. You'll get all that stuff. So it's a lot of technology, but change like this doesn't really just happen with technology. People are at the core of this kind of work and this kind of change. And so we are going straight to the source. Like, collaboration is absolutely key. We have a lot of industry partners we're working with. A group I lead called the Bundle Working Group is folks from Meta, CallStack, Expo, Airbnb, Google, Klarna. We meet monthly and we talk about what's happening in the world of bundling and what changes should we be making and what's everybody working on and where do we want to spend our time. These kind of collaborations really help change direction and align a bunch of people around single ideas, and that's really where change really takes hold. We have meetings regularly with Meta about the platforms we're building, about the user experience challenges that we face, and most recently about developer experience, which is kind of what this talk is about. And so let me wrap up. What did you learn today? This is the slide you're going to want to send to your boss or whoever you work for. Said, why did you send me to this conference? Well, this is what I learned. Microsoft loves React Native. We're heavily invested in this. And the challenges that I'm telling you about, the developer experience challenges, the technology challenges, the people challenges, it requires some change. And we are working towards an exceptional developer experience. That's our focus. RNX Kit is our way to introduce tools that solve these problems, but really collaboration is the key. Collaboration is how this change happens. And so in the spirit of collaboration, I'm inviting you to please try this stuff, try the tools, share your ideas, leave feedback, land code, write your own tools, we'll submit them to the repo. Engage in the community in any way you can. And if you want, find me on Twitter, let's talk. Speaking of talks, we have another talk at RNEU here. You can hear about how Microsoft is improving React Native and using it to power parts of Windows and Office to reach over 1 billion users. And this is sort of a broad view of React Native at Microsoft and how it lands in each of our different products. And so let me close with the theme of this talk, which is that a rising tide lifts all boats. Software really does have tremendous leverage. A few of us can impact many developers in a positive way. And positive change is just good for everyone, and it is the way forward, the way that developers will accept change, and the community responds well to things that help it and abandons things that don't. And we want to make sure we're in tune with what the community really needs. We want to lift all boats and head in that direction. So thank you so much for your time and attention. My name's Adam Foxman. You can reach me on Twitter at afoxman4. My DMs are open, and I'm so looking forward to meeting you. Thanks.